Okay, welcome everyone to the Whitman Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. It's 7 o'clock. We are broadcasting on the virtual Zoom platform thanks to Whitman Hanson Cable Community Access. I will just take a quick moment to go over the agenda that was emailed in advance. We have outstanding meeting minutes. We have 3 sets of meeting minutes. 2 in January, 1 from last week. The reserve fund stands at 37,000. Gotta go for my glasses, sorry. I'll try it. 37,321.20. So the public forum is temporarily suspended due to the COVID-19 restrictions. I encourage anyone from the public that wishes to get some information to the Finance Committee to send an email to randerson@whitman/ma.gov. So new business tonight, we're going to do introduction with our new town administrator, Lincoln Heinemann. We're going to do a little bit of a budget review, perhaps. On the agenda also is our standing old business items. Subcommittee reports, Whitman Hanson Regional School District assessment, non-mandated busing, and the audit. Also on old business now, we have place setters for the annual town meeting, the special town meeting warrants, and the Board of Selectmen joint meeting agenda. So we, communications, we do have 1 communication, and we have in other business, the town administrator and the town accountant. Welcome Ken as well. So I know Ken's time is a little limited tonight as well. So we will dispense with the previous meeting minutes till after we have Lincoln and Ken kind of caught up to where we are with the budget. So at this time, I would like to introduce our new town administrator, Lincoln Heinemann. If you want to give a few comments to the board, we'll go around and introduce the members of the Finance Committee, starting with Kathleen Otina, John Noon, Chuck Colby, Ralph Mitchell, Al Cafferty, and John Galvin. Absent tonight is the coach, the vice chair, Dave Cordero, who couldn't be in attendance tonight. So Lincoln, we welcome you to Whitman and we welcome you to our Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Again, really appreciate the time to speak with you a little bit, and very much looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you. You know, and I'll say on a personal note, I have served for many years. I think I was trying to figure it out the other day. I think almost 10 on the advisory committee in Situate, which is the equivalent of the Finance Committee here in Whitman. And I'm a lifelong South Shore resident, grew up in Situate, continue to live there. And so, but I certainly, in that experience, I think gained even that much more of a perspective and a particularly meaningful perspective on the incredible work that you folks do. I recognize how much work it is, and how much time it takes to do a good job at it. So really appreciate you folks having me here tonight, and I especially thank you very much for being flexible with the meeting time. That meant a lot to me, because I do absolutely want to be at every one of your folks' meetings, or as many as I certainly can. And obviously that was difficult with having the Board of Selectmen meetings on the same evening. So I really appreciate your folks' willingness to be flexible on that, to allow me to be here and work closely with you folks.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Lincoln. So just as a little preface before we get into a report maybe from Ken on an update from the budget, I'll just give you an idea of what the Finance Committee has done to date just for this fiscal year, fiscal 22 budget season. So we did a budget mailing with Ken being the resource to receive all of the information from all the town departments. we scheduled and met with every town department, just to, to get a sense of where each department is looking to go with their budget. And like I said, Ken was the one who kind of kept what we referred to as our budget worksheet Article 2 up to date with all of the various information that has been coming in, changes. And I know, we talked a little bit about where the budget is now and that the requests are in excess of the available resources. So at our last meeting, we discussed on just making a little bit of an approach from a different aspect with respect to the Article 2. Ken has sent out a revised copy with some changes that will allow us to backfill instead of trying to find ways to cut out the 700 plus $1,000 deficit. So Ken, if you want, I know your time is limited tonight, so maybe if we hear from you first, you want to run us through whatever you want to update the board on with respect to the Article 2 that we have. You sent it last week. It's referred to at the bottom as Article 2 Fiscal 2022 working copy 2921 with a parentheses of the 1 in between. So is that the copy that everybody else has? I want to make sure everybody has the same copy. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody that doesn't have it, just raise your hand. Sounds like everybody has that copy that Ken forwarded last week. So Ken, you want to walk us through whatever you want to update us on where we are with this Article 2 that we requested from you?
Okay, so the most recent changes that were made from that, some of these might have been discussed at the meeting last week. There was the new contracts for the health inspector and for the town administrator. Those salaries were adjusted.
Ken, if you could just go to the line when you refer to something, if you can.
So that's lines 5 and 197. So those went down based on the estimates that were there before, or the placeholders that were there before. The snow and ice deficit wasn't a thing last year, but it will be this year. We are already in a deficit position based on a letter that Bruce had sent out last week. So I had plugged in an estimate of 50,000 because who can predict the weather for the most part. This deficit does include a rather substantial salt order. So I mean, Bruce will have to speak to whether that will be enough to see us through the rest of the season. So I'm hoping that the rest of the expenses in snow and ice will just be labor and any repairs to the vehicles. Yeah, those are the 3 biggest changes that were made since the last file that I sent out prior to that. Nothing has come out since then for changes, at least that are of any substantive nature. At least aside from the level fund column that Rick and John had requested that I put together as well.
So that's the second column from the end, level fund by request.
Yep.
And the final column is the percent increase or decrease. Okay, does anybody have any questions on the Article 2 changes that were made with this particular version that we have in front of us? Okay, so some of the discussion last week too, while we have you, John, you did request that we go through some of the revenue forecasting. Did you want to pull that page up and take a look and get Ken's feedback on that?
Well, honestly, what I was requesting was for Lincoln and Ken to go through it so that the estimates that we're working with now, I believe Ken did maybe back in October. And now we're in February. Obviously there was some, he just changed the snow and ice, but more around the local receipts and those estimates. I know he did make a change on the cherry sheets a couple weeks ago, but more, I was just, hopefully to utilize Lincoln's expertise in working with Ken in solidifying a number that we can work for. Maybe it's going to go down. Hopefully it's going to go up, but that's really what I was asking about for Lincoln and Ken to review it.
Lincoln, did you have the opportunity to sit with Ken at all?
I did. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, so Ken and I spent quite a lot of time looking at both revenues and then, really sort of beginning the conversation about expenditures from my perspective. And let me say, we're very fortunate to have Ken. I can see that, I've been on the job now for a week, and, certainly feeling everything out, and certainly I can see what an asset Ken is to the town here, just in the few conversations we've been able to have so far. So I just want to say that off the bat. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I know there's just to sort of frame the budget conversation a little bit, if I could. I know there was some conversation amongst this committee last week about the process going forward. Mr. Chairman, you and I had the conversation about what my thoughts are about timing, and also about coming together, collaboratively to come up to make an attempt at having one document that everyone feels good about. As far as timing goes, and obviously you folks on this committee know this budget very well. Many of you have known it for many years, and certainly for many months when I've been studying it, for a lesser time period. I would say I do think we're not too far off in the grand scheme of things as far as having a balanced budget. So I definitely want to work collaboratively with you folks in getting there. I know traditionally there's been that joint budget meeting with the Board of Selectmen a little bit earlier in the process and in the schedule than it might be ideal from my perspective this year, just because I've been here 1 week, and I want to be sure to be able to provide meaningful, a meaningful input on that. So that's part of the conversation, I think, of hopefully having that joint meeting a little bit later. But I wanted to stress, most importantly, that in the conversation about having one budget document that everyone feels good about, I just want to reiterate strongly. I know you, Mr. Chairman, spoke about that last week. I just want to reiterate strongly that that is, I'm sure, where we're going to be able to get. That's clear to me about that's the right place to go. There's certainly no intention whatsoever of having some second document. I do not see how that would happen. It won't happen. I can't see a scenario this year where it would happen. And so I just want to stress again that, from my perspective, it's really important just to be able to come together and get one budget document that the stakeholders, that all the stakeholders feel good about. Both yourselves, the Board of Selectmen by extension, and then ultimately, obviously, town meeting. So I just want to reiterate that. As far as revenue goes, so that's certainly the way I'm sure probably a lot of folks on the committee look at it, and that's certainly the way that I look at it, is looking at revenues first, and then and only then expenditures. Can't spend what you don't have, and I think making sure that we have really solid, concrete revenue numbers is key. I certainly think that Ken's work on that is solid. So a couple of the areas that he and I were talking about where I think maybe there might be room for possibly tweaking those numbers a little bit are not in local receipts, but rather in new growth. So, I'm not prepared now to say, I think new growth should, that we could look at it a little bit higher, looking at history. But we had the conversation today with our principal assessor, Kathy Keefe, and that's something that I do think tentatively we might be able to have a little bit of a bump up in revenue in looking at new growth. And the other piece, and again, this is not a conversation that can be concluded by any stretch of the imagination tonight. But I do think in looking at one other account, the overlay reserve, which is used to fund abatements and exemptions, that's a possibility of something that perhaps with the Board of Assessors approval, if they agree that perhaps there's some level of excess in there, that some level of funds may be available to help support the fiscal year 2022 operating budget there. So again, I want to make very clear that I think those are two preliminary areas. I don't want to commit to anything tonight, but I do think there's two areas where we can look at, and I'm certainly going to, with Ken, very closely look at those over the coming week and a half. As far as the local receipts go, I mean, I do think that, I know historically the town has been pretty aggressive in the predictions of local receipts, and the motor vehicle excise tax, building permit fees, et cetera. Those are the two big categories, obviously. I do think, I don't think there's any room, in my opinion, to go higher for those revenue estimates. If anything, I think they're a little aggressive. However, in the budget situation that we're in, I do think the town will meet them from the information that I know, but I personally would not want to go any higher with those revenue predictions. So that's where my mind's at with revenue, in speaking with Ken and looking holistically at it. And I know we can talk later about expenditures, and I appreciated seeing your folks meeting last week about where you're thinking going forward with expenditures, and certainly I'm here to be an ally in finding getting there towards a balanced budget and looking at that expenditure side of things. So obviously happy to discuss further and take any questions that folks have, et cetera.
Okay, so John, does that answer your question on the revenue side?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we need to have a solid revenue. Like you said, we can't spend what we don't have. Where we're in a tight pinch right now, any extra dollar that we can get, I agree with the new growth. That's definitely an area that I, think, the one other local receipt that I would think we need to look at is the ambulance. That's only at 85% of, we were almost 1.1 million last year, and we're at 815 right now in our budget. So that's an area I think that, we could be aggressive with, to move some of the numbers to get us anything else that we can get to help balance.
And agreed on the ambulance. I think I didn't mention that. And one thing that I wanted to take a look at a little bit is just how the first 6 months of collections have been. I know Ken had mentioned in speaking with Chief Greno that some of the collections were off a little bit. But that's something I think, we want to look at a little bit more.
Okay, Rosemary, you had a question or a comment?
Just a quick question. In past years for Norfolk Aggie, we've overestimated the cost of students, and about this time we start to get a sense of money coming back. Has anybody looked into that? We overestimated there, and if they've sent money back.
Okay, so that's another thing. Ken, can you take a look at that? Put that on your list, I guess? So obviously, we're still waiting for the big ticket from our biggest town department, which is the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. Looking forward to a budget rollout meeting very soon here, and that's that line 175 obviously is going to drive the bus here a little bit too. So go ahead.
John Noonan had asked something last week about the recreation department and what happened. It appeared that they were unaware that they had a budget. Maybe this is a misunderstanding of what they'd said, but when they came in, we had voted in a budget, and when the new recreation head came in, they needed money to open the pool, and that was part of their budget before. So there was a question on what had happened to the budget that was voted in, or what was in that.
I think this suggestion was made to the recreation department that they get in touch with Ken to discuss budget overall, because they were asking for, granted it's small money, but they were asking for a significantly more money for the 22 year, when they haven't really spent anything in the 21 year, the year we're currently in, because the pool never opened. People never worked the pool. But they didn't understand that they currently had money that they could use towards opening the pool and doing other recreational things before the end of this fiscal year. They were looking ahead to 2022 as needing that much more money to check on the pool, because they had some question where it hadn't been used in a year. And the suggestion was made at that meeting that they get in touch with Ken for kind of a basic, this is how the budget works discussion. And my question last week was wondering, did that discussion ever take place with Ken?
Go ahead, Ken. Thanks, John.
It did. I remember emailing back and forth with the director when we planned the initial meetings. I tried to, as best as I could, explain how the revolving accounts work for recreation, where the money that comes in for the pool passes and the park programs, how it all kind of flows through, and that's their primary source of revenue for running the department for the most part. And I think when the budget was first submitted, I don't think that was taken into account, that there was revenue there, or that will be coming in those revolving accounts. And so I think the budget that is in the file now has that taken into account. But I tried to send over a history of what we had generally collected in those revolving accounts for, I left out last year, obviously, so I went back 2 years and 3 years to see what was generally there in the wintertime and how it progressed. And I know that since the pool wasn't open last year, I don't know what surprises are going to lurk beneath when it's opened this year, with the costs that are going to be involved in opening it up. But there is some money there that she can use as like a starting point. And then it'll just have to build up from the programs that are going to come about once the spring and summer hit.
Does that answer your question, John Noon?
Has the budget actually been reduced, the request for 2022?
Significantly from the first one I got. Or
Okay,
the first one that
terrific.
you got, yeah, by a lot.
Because somewhere along the line, I had missed that the money had been taken out. Granted, it's a small budget, but I didn't realize the connection had been made and it was all taken care of. Terrific, thank you.
Okay, and that does bring up, Kathleen, I'll get to you next. I just wanted to say that we do have some new department heads. And Lincoln, have you, or do you have plans to have a budget manager meeting in the near future?
Yeah, so I've been meeting individually and making sure, that, obviously doing the sort of basic management work. I wouldn't say it's been particularly focused on budget, but certainly knowing this now about a little bit of the history with recreation, that's certainly something that I'll focus in on with her, and in particular with other new department heads, in making sure that that they know what they need to know as we go through budget process. So certainly it's a great idea with new department heads to make that a focus, and I will do that.
Excellent. Yeah, because Council on Aging just comes to mind as well, too, because we have a new director there. Kathleen, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. So Lincoln, one hot potato out there that we on the Finance Committee can really use your help with is the non-mandated busing line item. That it's too big a number to ignore, and we don't want it to become a controversial us versus them situation. And I do plan to attend next Tuesday's informational meeting that's being presented by the superintendent of schools. But I've looked at the ancient history of this non-mandated busing going back to the early 1990s, when a handful of students who couldn't cross Route 18 cost the town $6,000. We're now looking at $400,000, and no one questions it. So just, not that you're unaware of it, but bringing to your attention, this is a big dollar line item that really needs to be scrutinized.
And a couple things. And so that's something that I certainly intend to be at that informational meeting too, because it's something that I want to learn more about. What I do know so far is that it seems clear to me that going back and looking at the 1991 regional agreement, section 5, I went back and did some reading because, so to back up a minute, back up a little bit, in a as I'm sure folks on this committee know, in a non-regional school district, it's really within the purview of the school committee of that district to make a decision about what transportation looks like above and beyond what the state law requires for distance and age, et cetera. So it's certainly something that I know it's been a point of conversation. It does seem to me that in section 5 from the 1991, in place agreement, or this section is in place from my perspective, that, since the regional school committees made the decision to not provide that non-mandated busing, that that the process is that they come up with this assessment. And so I do think I want to have a few further conversations about it and make sure that my thinking on it is in concert with the law and the agreements and everything. But it does seem to me that the essential decision for the town meeting, and by extension the finance committee, right, and in any other body of town, is this funded or not, right? And so and again, there may be some different perspectives on it, but just from getting myself familiar with it over the first week here, that seems sort of the clear question is sort of an up or down. Is this supported by the town meeting, and again by extension the finance committee, or not, and less about the particulars of what that non-mandated busing looks like. Now I know there may be some different opinions about it, but it's complicated in one respect, and in another way pretty simple. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, Rosemary, hold on one second.
Chapter 71, I think it's handled under regional school aspects in 71, that it's the town that's responsible for that section and ultimately determines who to pay. And I think that's where they took the language from for the agreement, I believe, if I remember.
Okay.
Yes.
So just and maybe give a little bit of a history, Al, I'll get you right next. We have been having this conversation for many years, so it's not something new. The other thing that's kind of new, it seems as though, there seems to be some concern about, who's going to make this decision. So we certainly are going to have a long conversation with the Board of Selectmen to see where they are, because support for any changes to non-mandated busing has evolved over the years. We got to the point last year where the conversation at our joint meeting was more of, maybe let's talk about the logistics of a pay-to-ride program, and talk about ways that we could reallocate this significant expense and use the resources where they are probably more needed. So the conversation now is, we have been talking about some kind of a change, but every year it either gets thrown back because there's not enough time. The budget season is driving the bus, and the other part of it, was the contract. The contract isn't up, and it's more or less like watching a tennis game. It's going back and forth. But at the end of the day, a policy decision is the responsibility of the the Board of Selectmen. But it is a financial decision. There are financial implications, obviously, to this line item within Article 2. So I think we definitely need to have more conversations about it. And at some point tonight, we get into our schedule. I want to see how many Finance Committee members want to attend the meeting. There are some pretty unusual parameters that are established for the meeting itself. But I'm of the opinion that if we have a quorum there, I'm posting the Finance Committee, because there is a possibility that we'll have a conversation within the Finance Committee. So even though it's a non-posted meeting, we're going to post if we have more than a quorum. So we'll, all I wanted to say was just that there's been a long history of a discussion here, and we keep getting just end up with no as an answer every year. And I think that this is the year we have to have a substantive where the dollar figure is a major stepping stone into our budget, I think. So that's all I have to say.
Is this part of the topic later on, the non-mandated busing? Have you?
It is, yes.
Okay, so I'll ask the question.
Okay. All right. So generally speaking, Ken, I know your time, you said your time was limited. Is there anything else that you see that you need to work with Lincoln in the revenue side, or where you think you have enough information from the budget managers until we get the number from the schools to move forward on our Article 2?
There is some more revenue discussions that we'll probably be having, likely with new growth. Snow and ice will probably work itself out over the next month or so. The local receipts, as we mentioned earlier, I would rather not get those any higher than they are. I kind of stretched to get them that high to begin with when we were setting the tax rate. And so I'd rather not go another dollar more. And yeah, those items that Lincoln had touched on earlier, I think will be some talking points for us over the next few weeks to see where we can be more in line with what we have, and then take that and figure out what we can spend with it.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Ken?
Just quickly, Ken, you mentioned that you had done some trending for the recreational department. Is there any way that you could pull things together so that we can look at how things that different departments have grown? I know I did this a few years ago quickly, but grown in the last 5 years, so that when we're looking at this, we're seeing the rate of growth. Because sometimes we can look at a department and say, you're growing at a rate that's a little too fast, or, you know, growing a little hot. If we're seeing how we're investing each year over the course of 5 years, and ask some questions. We get budgets and everyone says this is absolutely what we need, but, you know, without looking at how they're growing and, you know, having reasons for that growth, I don't think that we're doing our job so well. So
Like an expenditure history just within Article 2, outside of.
Yeah, just the intent. Yeah, it's essentially something like that, just similar to what, even just a percentage of growth for the departments. If you could, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, Al, I apologize. You had your hand up twice. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem, Rick. Welcome, Lincoln, to the Finance Committee meeting. Welcome to Whitman. The question I brought back, I don't know if it was you or Ken, maybe a question for both of you. You mentioned about the line item that we have for the ambulance funding, and we're significantly behind on collections. Can you explain that a little bit more to me, why we're behind when EMS services are up? Either one of you?
I believe it has something to do with the collection rate from the insurance companies and not necessarily the number of patients. It was addressed last year that the collections that we had would be coming down when we made the article for town meeting to move the ambulance funds or the ambulance receipts to the local receipts section.
Right.
Which is why I didn't go aggressive on that line item. When I had bumped all the other lines up, I had kept the ambulance line the same at that 85%. And on a smaller scale, the motor vehicle fines, I dropped instead of keeping that the same, just because people aren't driving as much in these times. So there's not enough tickets to give out. But with the ambulance parts, Chief Greno would probably know more about it than I would, but I vaguely remember him mentioning something about the collection rate with the insurance companies as opposed to the patient volume.
And the service levels are down, I would imagine.
Maybe a little. I have the reports in a drawer next to me.
No,
Like,
Was it something with Medicare? I thought he said something about Medicare having an issue.
Well, we can get some more information about
Yeah,
that.
well,
Al. You'd like to follow up
Please do.
on
It's a
it?
big, go ahead.
if I could, I know I want to understand it better too, and I don't at
Yeah.
this moment, but we'll definitely get some more information about
Okay.
about
Thank you.
what's going into that. Yep.
Thank you.
Is that good, Al?
That's perfect. Thank you, Lincoln.
Okay, thanks. John
Thanks,
Galvin.
Yeah, so there's one other line I'd like to have Lincoln and Ken kind of research a little bit, and it's kind of an elephant in the room that it's hiding very well, and that's line 131, which is the deputy chief of the fire department. That's $135,000. That's a position that currently does not exist. It's been involved with contract negotiations for the last several years, so I just want to kind of get it on the radar. I know the contract's being negotiated now, and whether or not that's something we are required to recommend, or if that's something we can say, no, we can't afford it. I know the last couple of years they haven't done it because they haven't been able to afford it. So,
From my perspective, understood. And I would say, we spent some time on revenues. I need to spend a little more time on expenditures, but certainly understood. And I think the large expenditure increases are the things that first off really need to be looked at carefully. So, understood.
So I would suggest for the board that we are still waiting for the budget number for line 175 from the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. But I would say that these questions are definitely need to follow up before we get right back into this Article 2. We still have a long way to go. And I think that we need to remember, like I said, what we gleaned from the meetings with each town department. As Dave mentioned last week, we don't want to say we wasted our time meeting with every town department if in fact we're not going to follow up on either their concerns or our concerns with the ability of the town to fund the request in their entirety. So I think this conversation is great, but it's got to happen in the next couple of weeks. I think at some point when Ken has more time and we have Lincoln here for us to go line by line through Article 2, I think as a first pass, just so we can talk about the things that we glean from the meetings with all of the department budget manager. Is that more or less the sense of the committee, or do you want to spend more time on Article 2 at this point, or as we mentioned last week, wait till we get the budget numbers from the district and then move forward, I think, line by line? John Noon.
I'm fine with, basically waiting, but I would say when we meet with the selectmen, it would be helpful to understand what their approach is going to be with the vacant assistant administrator position and the, maybe open-ended consulting position to help Lincoln get acclimated. Where is all of that going to fit going forward in 2022?
Right.
Doesn't
so Lincoln, I guess to follow up, John, speaking about bringing Frank Lynham back on as a consultant to, to kind of help Lincoln with some of the nuts and bolts of coming get his feet on the ground here. So that money is coming out of the assistant town administrator line item. Is that correct, Ken?
At this moment, correct. Yes.
Is there a contract in place, Rick?
Board of Selectmen have a contract in place. Is that correct, Lincoln?
That is correct.
Is there a period of time? Is there a period of time for that?
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, I can tell you here in one moment. I believe it's officially until the end of this month. That's, I think, going to be the subject of some further conversation. But
Okay. So generally speaking, to John's point, are there any line items within Article 2 that the Board of Selectmen feel strongly about where the direction of the Finance Committee is going, or is it too premature to bring them onto the table? That question for Lincoln.
From my perspective, it's a little premature. I know I'm going to have some recommendations as far as expenditures that I don't have quite yet. I certainly would love to get this committee's input. It's, you know, because obviously you probably spent more time with that than anyone in talking with the department heads. But certainly, you know, like I said, we had the conversation about maximizing revenues to the extent possible, and the next part is about expenditures. You know, so you know, I can, dependent on the direction from the Board of Selectmen and from this committee, I can certainly come up with, you know, a recommended balanced budget, and that's my intention. I don't want to overstep, you know, the bounds of tradition and you know what each board's and committee's role is, but certainly I, like everyone, you know, collaboratively have an interest in having that balanced budget. So I'm certainly going to have my thoughts and recommendations, but you know, have no interest in overstepping the bounds. So
Okay.
I don't know. Is that a helpful answer?
Yeah, well, Ken
Okay.
Ken had the same concerns at the outset of the budget season,
Yeah.
and used those exact words. So, and he has managed to overstep all the way. So we're very glad to have him on board. So you know, he's been a very good conduit to getting updated information from the budget managers as we go through this process. So I'd like to say that has been a definite benefit for this committee. Rosemary.
When we're going about this balancing of the budget, both committees, both Selectmen and the Finance Committee have said that we would recognize the Madden and use those Madden guidelines. Is that something that you're keeping in mind, Mr. Heinemann?
Certainly it is. Certainly it is. I mean, you know, I would say there are, right? I mean, so there's operational things that change with a budget where, you know, a recommendation or a suggestion from me about what that budget's going to look like may not match what the Madden report says, because operationally there is a need here and we've identified some savings over here. You know, I do think as a bottom line, so department by department, I know that's not a commitment that I would feel comfortable making, because I think, you know, because a budget is obviously a policy document as well. And so, you know, and that requires policy input from the Board of Selectmen, right? But certainly as a bottom line, certainly I'm well aware of the Madden report recommendations and, you know, and those guidelines, but department by department, you know, I'm certainly aware of it and cognizant of it and want to respect that, but I certainly wouldn't make a promise that each department is going to be having that level increase, but more, you know, bottom line.
Yeah, and that's kind of in our focus too, is like we get to the point where we're looking at a balanced budget. We would like to return the information to the budget manager to then plug in the line item changes to affect that budget for that department. So we're really not at the level of scrutinizing town budget managers' budgets by changing line items within their budget. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything for Ken? Because we're going to lose him. So Ken, hopefully we get you back next week. Our meetings are on Monday. Does that affect your schedule at all?
Not too much.
Okay. You might be zooming in from home. That's all, right?
Yep. Good look at this
Excellent.
background, because that's it.
All right. Well, like again, we really appreciate your help all through this budget cycle. Okay,
Thanks, Ken. I'll try to
we'll let
send
you
those-
go.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Lincoln.
Thank you, Ken.
I'll try
Thank
to send
you.
those requests out this week.
Okay. All right, so that gets us, unless anybody has anything else they want to discuss within the new business of the budget revenue side. Any other questions for Lincoln regarding the budget? Okay, so seeing none, we'll move on to our old business items. So again, we'll talk a little bit more in detail for some of these things. But again, you know, we obviously, this is a, you know, an ongoing discussion we're going to have. So subcommittee reports, Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee. Dave Cadero is not in attendance. He is the chairman of the Capital Committee, as well as the vice chair of this committee. So do you know, John, have they met recently since last week?
Do I know Dave's
No.
committee? No, I have no idea.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll wait for next week for an update. Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, there has been no requests for a meeting date. Middle School Building Committee.
No meeting since last week, but I do have a little bit of clarity on some of the discussion we had last week regarding the 6 through 8 versus the 5 through 8. And from what I've gathered, because I did have some questions myself, both options are open to us right now. And as we move into the feasibility study, I believe both options will remain open for a little bit of time during the feasibility study, so that the feasibility study, from what I'm understanding anyway, will help us kind of make the decision on what type of building we want. Do we want to go 5 through 8? Do we want to go 6 through 8? Maybe help us some clarity on what the cost would be to go 5 through 8, because it's going to be a more expensive building. It's going to cost the taxpayers more to build a building that's 5 through 8 versus a building that's 6 through 8. So, you know, the options are still open. That's all I really wanted to clarify. No decisions have been made on that, though I would still want to comment to this committee that I'm still, the building committee themselves haven't been involved in a lot of these decisions to this point, and that worries me. That the district is going through and making decisions. I mean, where did the 5 through 8 come from in the beginning? It wasn't, you know, we have a 6 through 8 building. You know, so we're talking about changing not only the middle school, but also effective change on the elementary schools as well by removing grades. And what are you going to do with those buildings and all of that? So hopefully we find out some more information the next time we meet, but we don't have a meeting scheduled as of right now. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you, John. Any questions for John? All right. Thank you very much. The next placeholder, we have Whitman-Hanson Regional School District and the assessment. So Kathleen, any feedback from the district with communications that you sent out as the liaison to the Finance Committee?
In response to my request for information on the how they calculate the transportation, I believe the superintendent scheduled that informational meeting. So I don't get any direct responses to my requests, but I get information secondhand that information will be available.
Okay, so Lincoln, you're up to date on the assessment issue where we had a hybrid assessment that was ratified by the town meeting last year to the tune of $500,000, which is affecting our budget this year. So I think it would be important moving forward if we got a sense from the board, and I know this changed through the budget cycle last year, but is anybody on this board of the opinion that we should be looking for another hybrid assessment for the upcoming budget? Okay, I see a no, I see a no.
That's a no.
Is anybody think that that is a good idea?
I want
Rosemary.
to throw this out there.
No.
we share busing with Abington, maybe we could give some money to them too. I mean, just a thought, since we're connected to those guys too. Maybe there's a couple other towns that might need some extra money. Maybe come up with that. But other than that, I think Hanson's got their share.
Okay, so
It's
I
ridiculous.
think, it's good to take a poll. Lincoln, from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, is there any support for changing the method of assessment for the upcoming budget cycle?
Not
You
that
know-
I'm aware. No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. See, one of the problems that we ran into last year was because there was the ray of hope that this, olive branch for some financial assistance for the assessment for Hanson, it actually derailed the train for them to do responsible. And I don't want to get into Hanson's finances, but they are a partner in our district. So what they do does affect a little bit what we do, especially with respect to the assessment. But by having that hope, they didn't work, to make the hard choices to get more revenue. And again, this year they'll be looking at an override. And if there is any hope that some town board puts out there that is a possibility, I think it will help derail the train again. So like I said, that's the only reason why I wanted you to see that there's no support for that within the finance committee, and just to give you a sense of that's the direction that this board is going to take. Okay, so with respect to non-mandated busing, we did touch a little bit on it. I do want to talk a little bit about the meeting Tuesday, the 23rd, which is next week. That will be following our regular meeting, but I'd like to get a sense of how many people wish to attend that. I would hope that we have quite a number of finance committee members that are interested. Just a couple of points there that the district has quoted. It's going to be a comprehensive meeting. It will not be a posted meeting, and there will be no deliberations. So those are the ground rules, I guess, associated with the meeting. So like I said, I intend to post this meeting tomorrow if enough of this finance committee is interested in going to hear what the district has to say. John Noon, then Rosemary. John Galvin, sorry.
All right, so if you post that meeting, then it needs to be recorded, just like this meeting's being recorded, within 24 hours. So how would that intent be done?
So we will take meeting minutes, if we're in a posted meeting. Meeting minutes are what we typically have when we post a meeting. I
So-
think that's,
Under the revised open meeting laws, there has to be a video recording or an audio recording of the entire meeting posted just like we do now. So if you post that meeting for next week, then it's going to have to get recorded somehow because it's a finance committee meeting. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as a roadblock to what you're trying to do. I understand what you're trying to do. But it's, if it's a posted meeting for the FinCom, it has to get recorded somehow and posted in a public site like the YouTube, like this meeting is.
sure. My intent is nothing more than to be in compliant with the open meeting law. So if you're saying by posting it will be in violation, then I will.
No, not we're in violation. We'd be in violation if we don't record the meeting. So if
Didn't he
we
say
don't
they'd
post
be
it-
recording it? I thought he said he'd be recording it on
I
the
don't
school
know.
committee. But of course, things change.
I have no
When I
idea.
watched the school committee meeting, it was stated he would be recording it. I do hope that this is not in lieu of receiving a copy of the contract, which we have requested. I still expect to see a copy of the contract or the past contract, because it is my understanding that the contract, the non-mandated portion, is contingent on the acceptance of the town, and the contract is not changed if we do not accept it. So it goes forward.
Be
So
specific, Rosemary, be specific which contract you're talking
the
about. please.
busing contract, what we're
Be
talking
specific,
about.
be specific.
Okay, so the busing
Well,
contract
this is
is
what
what
the
you
section we're
referred to.
talking about, and the meeting is about the busing contract. So
Okay, so Lincoln, is there a possibility you could request of the district to get a copy of the busing contract?
Well,
Thank you. So that is, and the other follow-up, I will find out, John Galvin, if the meeting is going to be recorded. And then as long as somebody's recording the meeting, we'll be in compliance. Is that correct? With your assessment?
Yeah, as long as we can get a copy of it and post it as a Whitman FinCom meeting. Because that would have to be, posted as a Whitman FinCom meeting. The video itself. I mean, even if it's their recording of it, it would have to, since it's a meeting of Whitman FinCom that you're posting, it would have to get posted as a Whitman FinCom meeting. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lincoln, you may have a little bit more direction there.
Lincoln,
Yeah, I'm not, I know that's how the governor's orders in relation to the open meeting law have been interpreted here. I'm not sure. That's not how many other towns have treated. So I want to take a look. Are you referencing, John, the open meeting law, the changes, or I shouldn't say the changes, but the suspension of certain rules
Correct.
that the governor put out? Okay.
Correct.
So I know there are a lot of towns and many committees in many towns have not treated that as needing to have a video recording of every meeting, but I know I'd want to take another look at that. If that's how, this committee's been practicing, then I'd recommend it be continued. And if there's any chance that 5 or more members would be there, I would agree with the chairman that it would be a good idea to have it posted as a meeting.
Okay, so just for reference, we have not needed to post a meeting other than our finance committee meetings because we've not had a quorum at anybody else's meeting. So this is a first as far as that goes. So I will certainly ask the questions through the district too about the recording. But like I said, my main focus is to make sure we're in compliance by posting where we have over.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd suggest if there's, you can always do a straw poll to determine how many members are intending to be there. And if it's only 4, then you may still want to post it, but you may need to worry less about a recording and that kind of thing. So.
Okay, so I think I'll take 2 straw polls on this one. Is there anybody on the finance committee who doesn't believe that non-mandated busing should be something that is discussed for Article 2 for this fiscal year? Is there anybody that doesn't feel that we should be discussing it? So I think by association, I think everybody has a vested interest in finding out what's going on with this, presentation. So how many people intend to attend with a raise of hands?
What's the time schedule on that?
4 o'clock.
Oh, 4 o'clock.
PM?
4
Next
to
Tuesday.
5:30.
What day?
Okay,
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Five.
that time likely not for me.
Okay, well, we do have 5, so, and I would suspect that the vice chair will probably be in attendance too, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna go ahead and get the information about the recording and then post. Okay. Is that all right? Seems to be the will of the committee to post a meeting?
Run it, yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's it for anything else under non-mandated busing for discussion tonight. So again, this is something we obviously need a discussion with the Board of Selectmen. The tricky part there is the district has all the information. And with respect to that, Lincoln, we did request some information from the district. And they provided us this 2021, I don't know if you can see that, transportation information. The problem with this particular information that they provided, it does nicely tie up the $401,178 that we paid on that line item last year. However, it doesn't take into effect the fact that the district negotiated with the transportation company in the summer of 2020 and received a rebate. So they got money back from the transportation that's not reflected in this handout. The handout, like I said, ties the numbers nicely. However, it doesn't incorporate the money that was reimbursed to the district. And it also doesn't list the same percentage of the non-mandated portion that was refunded to the town. So if you could just look into that a little bit from Ken on what was reimbursed from the non-mandated line from the district last, it was actually, we met with the district late fall and specifically asked them about the non-mandated portion of the rebate, and we ended up getting a check a couple weeks later. I don't know if we were going to get it, but we ended up getting it after that. So that's just something to if we're going to ask for a spreadsheet from the district, it's nice that it adds up, but it doesn't really add up. So it's just more information that we need. Go ahead, Al.
Hey, Rick, question on that. What was that? How much is that rebate? Do you know what the rebate amount was?
Ken has that information because it went back into our line. So
Okay.
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't want to give you a number. Go ahead, Kathleen.
And I just want to say that it's not as simple as tallying the total cost of transportation and dividing it by the total number of students bused, because
Sure.
that was that piece of paper that they sent us, which is an insult. What we need to know is how many buses are needed to fulfill our contractual obligation for mandated busing. That's one number. Then if the town decides to continue with non-mandated busing, how many buses is that? What does it really cost to bus the students? And we don't have that information. They haven't, I'm pretty good with numbers. They haven't given us the information needed to tease apart that piece of information we need to make an informed decision.
But Kathleen, if you could find out what the rebate was for, the percentage of the overall yearly expenditures on that, what they spent for a year, we did. But we need to find out what the rebate was for, how much. That's all.
Okay, we'll get that number for next
No,
week.
that's all.
$90,223.
So
So that was the non-mandated rebate, right, John?
Correct, correct.
Right, so the district negotiated a sum of money that was greatly in excess of that. And
Yeah.
what they voted to do in a school committee meeting was to utilize that money to buy a specific program for online learning, as I recall.
So they took that money that was allocated for that and spent it somewhere else, correct?
That is
Now,
correct.
the way I understood it, they credited our assessment by that amount. I have the
Right.
letter. I have the letter right here to Mary Beth Carter.
Right,
they
but the
took our
rebate,
They credited our assessment $90,000 on the non-mandated busing. So basically, our assessment in our Article 2 that we approved is going to come back with a $90,000 free cash at the end of the year.
right,
So
But-
they didn't spend it anywhere. They spent, that was something else that they did with the money they got. I think that was on the mandated part of it, but
right. It was on the mandated part. That's what I was talking about, John.
The mandate.
So they utilized that rebate for
correct.
curriculum.
ELA curriculum.
The
They
non,
used the mandated busing rebate to
right,
purchase 1 year of the ELA curriculum.
correct. The non-mandated, they credited our assessment. So whatever our assessment, the line item for last year will have a free cash, will be returned at the end of the year by 90,000.
So all I'm saying is that's not reflected on this sheet anywhere,
Right.
right? That's all I'm saying. Okay, so
Thank you.
that's something to look into. Anything else with respect to that? Okay. So, the audit. So additionally, Lincoln, there was a discussion for the past several years, I believe, to do a functional audit of the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. Did you get any information from the Board of Selectmen regarding that?
No, I know there are funds available for that, but that is the extent of my knowledge on that at this moment.
Okay, so I would be interested to find out. Apparently no funds were approved or earmarked for that particular thing. There was discussion last year about taking money from, different lines to fund that. But right now, we would need a standalone warrant article with a funding source, I think, for the upcoming town meeting to get
It's,
that done.
it's certainly a conversation that I also want to have with the Hanson Town Administrator,
Perfect.
and see where they're at with that, because
They voted in the money for that at their last fall's town meeting, so they have the.
but I'd certainly want to get an idea too as to, so they have the money available. Do they still intend to want to do it? So that's a conversation I want to have.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much. All right, and the annual town meeting, the communication that I was going to read is from the administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen. Please be advised that the Board of Selectmen at their meeting on Tuesday, February 9th, voted to open the warrants for the fiscal 22 annual and special town meeting on said date, and to close the warrants at the end of the business day on Friday, March 5th. All requests for article placement on the annual and special town meeting warrants must be submitted to this office along with appropriate supporting documentation by 4 p.m. on Friday, March 5th. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that is the only communication we have, and that is in regards to the warrants. So the last old business item is the Board of Selectmen joint meeting agenda. I think I did touch on, some of the things that we wanted to talk about, Lincoln, when we met. We have discussed in our open session what the board, Finance Committee, would like to talk about. And so as we move closer to that joint meeting, you're saying, you would recommend that to happen in March as opposed to February.
That's right. And it's certainly a conversation I want to have with the Board of Selectmen that I have not had a chance to, but
Great.
intend to at next week's meeting. Dependent, see, we're having that conversation about where the schools are with their budget. I am intending to recommend to them, either looking at the calendar, either March 23rd or perhaps even April 6th.
Okay. Very good. All right. So that exhausts all of the information on the agenda. Anything, Lincoln, you would like to add before we move to close?
No, I don't think so. Again, really looking forward to working with this whole committee, and I'm here as a resource. My email address, it's the same convention, Heinemann@whitman-ma.gov. I'm here, and please be in touch. Again, looking forward to working with you and being at your meetings and being a resource.
Welcome aboard, Lincoln.
Thank
Well
you.
deserved.
Thank you.
Okay, so is the board prepared to take a look at previous meeting minutes? Lincoln, that probably would be more than you could handle, to tell you the truth. If you would like to go out, you're certainly welcome. We appreciate you being here tonight.
I'm happy to see a whole meeting. Don't
Okay,
worry, not to
great.
worry. Thank you, though.
Excellent.
Sport, you're a sport.
All right, so we do have the meeting minutes from January 19th that Samantha provided. Again, just realize if we're making amendments, Samantha is going to have to do that from the recording. So I would suggest, that if there are significant changes to the draft meeting minutes, then I would suggest the board table them till we have Samantha back. If it's just a matter of, housekeeping, grammar, that type of thing, I think would be fine. So with that, everybody have a copy of the January 19th, 2021 meeting minutes? Anybody
Yes.
not? Okay. So on the first page, basically is just the attendance and the meeting minutes that were tabled for the first page. Any amendments on that page, which is referred to as 372? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to page 373. So on this page, the only spelling error I see on the last paragraph, it's just that concrete budget numbers, so we just have to change the spelling of concrete. That's all I saw. Anybody else? Anything on page 373? Kathleen?
Further up, where it says, when the document was emailed to Mr. Anderson, it looked complete on her end. However, she, not the.
Okay. Just change the T to an S. Samantha, thank you. Anything else on that page 373? Okay, moving on, page 374. So the top of the page, we're talking about non-mandated busing. We go to audit, we talk about the town report and town accountant, and in the final paragraph, we're talking about the open meeting law complaint that was filed by the town clerk. Anything on that page? Kathleen?
It's second paragraph from the bottom where it says Ms. Otina and Mr. Colby agreed that we didn't say only key component. One key component to help reduce the deficit is to reduce the funding. So change the word only to one.
Only to the word one.
Yes.
Very good. Samantha, thank you. Anything else on page 374? Okay, the last page, 375, is a motion to adjourn. I see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I will then entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the January 19th meeting minutes as amended.
I move the minutes.
We have a motion and we have a second by Al. Further discussion, roll call vote. Let's see, anybody absent? Nobody's absent. So Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Rosemary.
Okay, thank you very
Rosemary
much.
didn't vote.
I don't know. Hi, Rick. You forgot to ask me.
Oh, Rosemary.
I
sorry.
know. I thought we had a bit of relationship in that.
That was rude.
You're too
I
quiet
apologize.
today,
Passive
Rosemary.
aggressive stuff. I'm
You're too
sorry about
quiet.
last week.
Did you vote yes?
I voted yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll start with you when we go around the next one. All right, so the next meeting minutes are from January 26th, 2021. They were emailed in advance. And anybody not have a copy? We're going to start with page 376. Basically, talking about two meeting minutes and the discussion about how we were going to resolve the open meeting complaint. Anybody get any problems with page 376? Okay,
Rick,
John Noon, go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6th line down, I believe it is. Ms. Conley, and it should be Fields. So there
Very
should be
good, good catch. We'll add an L to fees. All right, very good. Thank you, John. Rosemary, is that how you feel? I want to make sure. Okay, all right. Page
I-
377,
I agree.
you agree? So on page 377, I see one typo on the second to last paragraph. Three lines from the bottom. This sentence says, Mr. Anderson said that the funding was to come from moving money from different line items. However, never a formal article was never presented. So I think we'll take one of the nevers out. I think we'll take the first never out. Okay, anybody else? Page 377. All right, 378 is the final page. We were talking about ways to communicate with the departments and talking about the new town administrator. Page 378, anything to change? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the January 26th meeting minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion in 2 seconds. Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to roll call vote. Oh, it's a dog barking. Kathleen,
Yes.
John? Noon?
Yes.
Chuck?
Abstain.
Abstaining. Ralph?
Yes.
Ralph, is a yes.
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
John Galvin?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So the meeting minutes are accepted from January 26th. Thank you very much. And the final meeting minutes are 2 pages that I mistakenly printed on some fine paper. Page 379, the meeting is February 9th, 2021, which was our last meeting last week. So the first page is 2 meeting minutes and a 7 o'clock discussion on how to proceed with a review of Article 2. Anything on that first page? Page 379, seeing none, we'll move to the second page, which is page 380. There's 2 typos on this one. The first paragraph at the end, Mr. Cadero stated that the article from South Shore Votek has R folded into the operating budget. I just say strike the has. I know Dave's not here, but that's a pretty simple one, right? Is everybody in agreement? Take out that word as. And then the second to last paragraph, the date there is incorrect on our next Monday, 7 o'clock, starting 2/22/21 will be our first Monday meeting, will be next week. Is everybody in agreement that that's the date?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on page 380? John Noon.
The second paragraph, the second line from the bottom. We're not losing that many students every year. It's about 900 students since 2007 to 2020. So it should be, has been a loss of about 900 students, not of an
An
average.
average, right. So change an average to about, right?
Right.
That would do it? Okay.
That'll do it.
Samantha, change on an average to about. All right, those 3 amendments. I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from last week, February 9th, 2021.
I move them.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion. Roll call vote, Kathleen.
Yes.
John Noon.
Yes.
Chuck.
Abstain.
Ralph.
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Rosemary.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, thank you all for going through those meeting minutes. Thank you, Samantha, for getting them typed up. That just moves us to the upcoming meetings. So at the bottom of the agenda, I did write what the upcoming meeting schedule looks like. So next week, we don't want to say it too many times, but we're meeting on Monday, 2/22/21. And then next Tuesday is the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District non-mandated busing presentation. So that's Monday, that's Tuesday, and then Mondays going forward, we'll be posting for March 1st and March 8th. And then the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen is to be determined. Okay?
Should we put together a series of questions, since this is a presentation that we email ahead of time? So that this,
No, it
this is
doesn't
so
sound like-
unusual. I've never,
This is-
Prepare questions, huh?
I
Sounds like
think this is-
presentation.
Yeah, I
This
know.
is,
Sounds
this is
like
gonna
we're
be
just
a
being
meeting
told.
where I think they're just gonna tell us. There's gonna be no deliberations. It was made clear. So there'll be no opportunity for discussion, I would assume.
and no rebuttal if the information doesn't align with state law or,
Well, we could certainly talk about it in our next open meeting, you know, so.
okay.
If, I would definitely take notes if there are some things that you object to or with. I would certainly hope that we'll have a discussion about it on the March 1st meeting.
Okay.
Kathleen,
I may well email John Tuffy ahead of the presentation to let him know this is the nature of the information we are looking for so that he can be prepared to address them, as opposed to saying, here are 10 questions we need answers to. But I want to know, how do you calculate non-mandated busing? And I believe that the Director of Transportation, Karen Villanueva, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing her last name correctly, but she will also be at that meeting. So they should be prepared to tell us, give us the information we need in order to make an informed decision.
all I would suggest is that have low expectations and you will probably not be disappointed from this presentation.
Oh,
But I would say we will need to follow up with our questions to be answered by the district if they are not answered by this meeting.
okay.
Anybody else? Lincoln, do you plan on attending, you said, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. All right.
Is
Very
this
good.
in person or is it going to be Zoom?
It
It's
is.
in person.
It is in person, so that's why I wanted to take a poll, because I will respond to the district tomorrow. They did ask for a head count so they can make the preparations. So I'm gonna make sure that we have seating for the Whitman Finance Committee.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, very good. Anybody have anything that they would like to bring up that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, non-debatable. We'll go around the room. Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you all.